introduce myself, and we start off the session for today, since we are just here for 2 hours. And as your 2 hours, nowadays, it's like an hour. Yeah, time really goes by so fast. So my name is Esther Nelima. I work with Initiative for Equality and Non-Discrimination, INED, some call it INED. So how best you feel you can pronounce it. I work as the Program Officer Collective Action. And I'm here with a colleague and other colleagues, of course. She can introduce herself. Okay, I'll introduce my colleague, Melody. Melody, who is our comms officer. Atakuwa hapa kutupea support in terms of technicalities, in terms of anything that might need her input. Of course, she'll be here joining. There she goes. Mumemwona. Okay. So thank you. So before we kick off, the session will be recorded for purposes of reference. I know there are people who might not be able to join the webinar, and it will be prudent for us to have a recording for them so that they can follow through the sessions. And also, since we say that we leave no one behind, and we wouldn't want to leave those that are not in position to join. So if it is okay, we will proceed to record. And during the session, in between, we will, or before we start, we can put on a video. If Melody already, everyone can put on a video so that she can take a screenshot of us who are here. So we can do it now in account. Yeah. Okay. So I'm being informed we can do it after. I hope everyone will hold on until we finish. So you can just proceed and put your videos off or on if you're comfortable. Now, I know most of us have been looking forward for this session. And it's something that has been either on our socials. If you have been active connecting with other networks, you've realized that conversations around public benefit organization, conversations have been happening, especially as we are heading towards the deadline of May for organizations that are registered as NGOs. And I know that it's a voluntary process. However, I know our able facilitator will give us more insights on that. So back for those who are engaging with INED for the first time and would like to know who we are, maybe where we are best, the work that we do. So we are an LBQ women-led organization, value-driven, not-for-profit organization advancing justice, inclusion, and protection of human rights in Kenya. We were founded in 2015. And as you know, our work, we work at the intersection of movement building, social transformation, recognizing that achieving equality requires both strong legal protection and shifts in social norms, that shape attitude towards gender and sexuality. So as INED, we engage communities, civil society, state and non-state actors to challenge stigma, foster inclusion values while convening activists and institutional stakeholders to strengthen collective action. And the reason why we are here. So through our capacity support for LBQ-led initiatives, strategic communication and storytelling, the production of research and evidence, which I know you have, some of our partners that are here have taken part in. INED amplifies LGBTIQ plus lived realities informs advocacy and strengthens accountability and contributes to the broader movement work to transform system and build society where LGBTIQ plus persons live with dignity and participate fully in social and political and economic life. So basically that is INED. And of course, we have our vision, which is an inclusive society and dignified lives for all. And we are bound by our mission, where we exist in order to influence policies and practices among institutions, leaders, and individuals for more proactive protection of the rights of sexual and gender minorities. So for this reason, under our strategic area of knowledge management and leadership development, in the same spirit of movement building, we saw it important to organize this forum. Our main objectives, I know it's very important to know why we are here. So as INED, as we say, that we look forward to inform our fellow LGBTIQ plus organizings about the finalized regulations and requirements of the PBO Act, to guide organizations through the transition process, including registration, compliance, and governance structures. So, and also we look forward to share context developed from earlier sensitization efforts that we highlighted, highlighting implication for our organizing. And the last thing is to provide practical recommendations and roadmap for organizational sustainability under the new legal framework. So basically, yes, that is INED and the reason why we are here. Just for context, I know we are a good number of us, and we'll be during the sessions, maybe there's something that will be shared, and we'll feel that it's important. We need to share it at that point when it has been touched on. If you allow me, you can either raise your hand or you can share it in the chat box. We will be here on point to ensure that either we as INED or our able facilitator is able to respond to any question that might arise. The issue of screenshots that I've shared. So I felt that it is important for me to share that before I proceed. So one more thing, before this, I remember, was it last week or this week, we shared a pre-assessment for registration, just to know and to gauge, to know how many people are familiar with the PBO Act. Have we, what provisions are there for us in terms of the LGBT organizings? Are we safe? Are we not safe? Can we proceed? Or are there issues? So, and the responses came in, and I know our able facilitator will give us a short summary report, analysis of how it is, and I know the presentation is really geared to respond to the needs based on the pre-assessment and even beyond. And after that, I know after the training today, we look forward to having a post-assessment, just to know if learning really has taken place. Are there areas that we need to engage further, or areas that we need further clarifications? Do we need to arrange for another convening like this one? So it will be important that each and every person who is in this webinar to fill the post-assessment survey for that to be effective. Are we okay? So mnipatie thumbs up tafadhali if you are okay. You can use the emojis so that I don't look like I'm talking too much. Okay. So if we are okay, just a brief context on our previous sensitization that we have. We had rather in 2024, I know it was limited to LBQ organizing that gave to a bigger intervention or initiative that we are having right now. So during the sensitization that we had on PBO, I remember us discussing about understanding what PBO Act entails. And also, since the recommendations were not yet out, we had recommendations on how we wanted, or we will have wanted the recommendations to be like, and to what things to address. And I know I wouldn't want to dig so much into that. I'll just give a brief context of that, and then our facilitator will take us through in details, giving us the current context given the regulations are out. So basically, the civil organizations in Kenya are broadly categorized in two types. If you're aware, we have the PBO organization registered as NGOs, trusts, and companies limited by a guarantee, working for the public good or common interests. Okay, member benefit organizations such as self-help group, youth, women groups, and community-based organizations, often set up for personal gain of members. Although NGOs represent only a small fraction of CSOs, and they remain the most visible. So the PBO Act, which is the Public Benefit Organization Act of 2013, came into force in May 14th, 2024, through the legal notice number 78 of 2024. Following years of delays and court orders compelling its commencement, the Act was designed to harmonize the outdated NGO Coordination Act of 1990 with the Constitution of Kenya of 2010. So, you know, the NGO Act was 1990, and remember we have our Constitution of 2020, which, you know, it had to speak to each other. You know, everything rotates around our supreme law, which is the Kenyan Constitution, and then which embedding principle of freedom of association, expression, and assembly, while requiring integrity and accountability in line with Chapter 6 of the Constitution. So there were persistent leadership rankles within the national NGO councils, fragmented legal frameworks had weakened self-regulations and professionalism in the sector. So the PBO Act seeks to address these challenges by providing a favorable environment for the growth and functioning of the PBO, establishing clear rules and institutions for registration and compliance, strengthening self-regulations and accountability, creating independent PBO dispute tribunal for redress. I know this will be discussed in depth, and then allowing PBO to engage in income generating activities to sustain their public benefits organization. So we had obligations for PBO, or rather public benefit organizations. So under the Act, the obligation also placed both government and PBO to the government also to create and maintain an enabling environment for PBO. That is the organizations under the PBO, respect freedom of association, assembly, and promoting ethical partnership. I know this is where our greatest problem is. When you look at the pre-test, the pre-assessment that we shared, people have worries around that. The PBO must uphold transparency, accountability, professionalism, democracy, human rights, and peaceful conduct in all activities. So in 2024, we conducted the 3-day sensitization where LBQ organizing or leaders were sensitized on the Act. We highlighted its implication for community-based organizations, self-help groups, and advocacy movements. At that time, the regulations guiding implementation had not yet been finalized. Through the Act had already ascended, though the Act had already been ascended into law, remember, and there were no regulations. So that was a concern in 2024. The transition to the PBO Act mandatory for all organizations, including CBOs, by the end of 2026, but there was a ruling that in May 2026, organization lazima ziwe zime transition. That is for NGO registered. So it was a critical undertaking. For our organizing, this presented both opportunities and significant challenges as they navigate compliance while often facing compound barriers such as stigma, marginalization, and limited resources that affect our governance, accountability, and long-term sustainability. So LGBT, that is our organizing, play a critical role in advancing human rights, inclusion, civic participation, and access to justice. However, many leaders remain uncertain about the technical and legal requirements for transition under the PBO Act, as witnessed or as evidenced even in the pre-assessment that we did. A structured webinar, which is today, that we have organized, we'll look forward to address some of these concerns or the issues that we have highlighted. So we had recommendations during the convening under our policy brief to the government, rather, which stated that there's need to review existing laws and policies in close consultation with civil society organizations to ensure full compliance with human rights standards in order to create an enabling environment for the implementation of the PBO Act that allows CSOs and CBOs to work effectively without threats of attack or judicial harassment by state or non-state actors, as we witnessed in 2019, when officers were raided in Kwale by government officials. So that is another fear that we have. And that's why we set forth this recommendation, that legislations that restrict their work, including in particular legislation that unnecessarily and disproportionately restrict the exercises of the rights to freedom of association, expression, and peaceful assembly should be ended or amended or reappealed. Ensure that any legislation adopted on the regulation of the NGO fully conforms to Kenya's national and international human rights obligation, and ensure that the adoption of such legislation is preceded by effective and meaningful consultation with CSOs and consideration of their concerns and recommendations. Looking forward to John to tell us how these engagements have bared fruits. So our other recommendation was encourage and support public benefit organizations by creating favorable environment in which PBOs it can thrive and carry on with their affair freely without unnecessarily state interference. Kwa sababu kulikuwa na concern ya once this is effective, there'll be monitoring of every activities, monitoring of, or even informing the committee that will be there. So looking forward for that discussion too. And then another recommendation was to create a favorable environment for individuals and PBO to enjoy the freedom of expression, association, and peaceful assembly. The last one was to promote benefit and ethical partnership between PBO and various actors in development, including the government and the donors. So for the civil society, what we had was there's a need to participate in quarterly CSO's ministerial roundtable to facilitate a structured dialogue between civil society, government officials, as well as provide crucial arena for civil society oversight on the implementation of the PBO Act of 2013. And then another one's to conduct sessions with CBOs, grassroots human rights defenders, women and LGBTIQ plus led organization to enhance our capacity on the new law and share the pros and cons of the new law. And that is why we are having this conversation. in collaboration with the Ministry of Social Service, support CBOs in understanding the law and develop a specific roadmap on how to support the CBOs to transition to the PBO. Now, so that was our policy brief regarding the sensitization that we had in 2024 after the enactment of the SEM. So allow me, before you allow me to introduce our facilitator, up to there, is there a question? Is there something that you feel that needed to have been captured to the policy brief that we had then, and you feel it needs to be put into context as the facilitator will be coming in to take over the session? So you can utilize the chat box or you raise your hand and you'll be given an opportunity to give your insights. So if everyone has understood the brief that we have shared, you can give me a thumbs up. Na mnipatie maua tafadhali. Kuongea kizungu mingi si rahisi. Yeah. Okay. So allow me to, thank you. So allow me to introduce our able facilitator of today's session. Is John Owengi. So John Owengi is an accomplished civil society leader, a governance specialist with more than 10 years of experience, strengthening institutional systems, advancing sector-wide self-regulations, and enhancing compliance within non-profit environments. He currently serves as the executive director of Civic Freedoms Forum, providing strategic leadership, fostering multi-stakeholder collaborations, and guiding organizational growth in aligning with accountability and good governance principles. So John holds a bachelor's degree in law from Moi University and a Master of Art in International Conflict Management from the University of Nairobi. His multidisciplinary training equips him with a strong foundation in legal analysis, conflict resolution, policy development, and organization governance. So through his career, John has worked extensively with civil society organizations to develop and implement self-regulation frameworks, strengthen institutional capacity, and promote adherence and international compliance standards. He is particularly skilled in designing governance systems, facilitating policy dialogue, and support organization to meet accountability benchmarking. So karibu sana, Mr. Owengi. You take over the session.
Thank you so much, Nalima. That's too much credit for me. Yeah, but yeah, good still morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to support with this sensitization. We actually will be learning from each other. Of course, we'll be taking lead to just coordinate the learning process today. I want us to ask all the questions we have on PBO Act. Some of the questions I may not have the answers, so I'll throw it back to you. But those that I will have the answers, I will obviously support us get the right direction. So let us, as much as possible, feel free to interact. You are also allowed to interject. Just raise your hand, drop your question on the chat box so that you don't forget what you would want probably to ask. Probably also, I mean, I looked at the expectations in the pre-assessment, which I'll be sharing briefly, but just in case you are saying the presentation is almost being concluded without your expectation being met, drop it in the chat box so that when we'll be in the plenary, we bring it back. I know 2 hours or 1.5 hours may not be enough, but I'll try as much as possible to present this in a manner that then gives us the foundational information and the right direction. I will also share with us on the chat box, together with in my report to INED, the links. We have developed simplified versions of the PBO Act in Swahili, also in English. If we have colleagues that would need sign language interpretation, both the English and Swahili version have sign language integrated within them. So again, we can share those links. They're on YouTube. They're also on our X handle. So that will also help us to also reach those that may not have had an opportunity to be with us here today. So I'm also hoping that Nelima will be sharing the soft version of this after the presentation so that we can also continue circulating widely. On our website, we have also the simplified version of the PBO Act. We are working on simplifying the regulations. We are putting together the pieces in simplified formats. Once done, again, we shall share with INED so that you can all receive. Now, allow me to just run through the results of the assessment. We got almost 75 responses from yourselves and other colleagues in terms of how they've interacted with the PBO Act. So I'll just allow me to just run through quickly. And the first thing is, it was very interesting to find out that we had interests from over 15 different counties, both urban counties like Nairobi, Kisumu, Mombasa, and peri-urban and rural counties like Kwale, Vihiga, Busia, Kilifi, Kisii, Homa Bay, all expressing interest to be part of this process. And I think that representation, that regional representation is really encouraging. Then we also looked at the composition in terms of categories of civil society that responded to the assessment. Majority of the responses came from community-based organizations, and followed by who we used to know as PBOs. Now they are called we used to call them NGOs. Now they are called PBOs in light with our new law now. Those formed the biggest chunk of responses. CBOs constitute approximately 74% and 22% NGOs or PBOs. You can already see that is above 95%. Then we also had smaller representation from self-help groups and company limited by guarantees and also grant makers. Which also, of course, then gives us a picture in terms of who is in the room and how do we package this for the majority, but also to just realize that we also have other people that may not be CBOs or NGOs, and they are also interested in this presentation. So how do we also share with them how this process affects them? Now, in terms of the sizes of the organization, most of the organizations were smaller grassroots organizations with up to 20 members. but we also had a few larger networks with over 100 members. Now, to the core of the assessment, our interaction with the PBO Act. We asked a question, how familiar are you with the PBO Act? And again, majority of the responses or most of the respondents, approximately 65%, indicated that they were somewhat familiar, so still unsure. And with around 28% indicating that they were not familiar with the PBO Act at all. But we had around 7% of the respondents who indicated that they had high level of familiarity. So the conclusion there is that the assessment is that majority of us, again, approximately 93%, were either unsure of their familiarity or not certain. Now, another question around preparedness of our organizations to transition. Most of the organizations were not sure about the transition, with around 34% saying that they were not prepared, and around 16% saying that they were prepared to transition. Closely linked to that is we also asked whether if you are to be trained, what would you prioritize for training? Majority said that they would prioritize transition process and the requirements for transition. The second group, just slightly following that, was what are the opportunities for the LGBTIQ organizing in the context of transition and the PBO Act. The other priority was on governance structure. We also had another priority on income generating activities. Of course, previously, most of the charity organizations were not allowed to engage in for-profit initiatives. Now we have a law that allows all of us to do that. And so that was also another priority. And then around 8% were interested in the overview of the Act. So that is in terms of the priorities for, in terms of what we need for training. Now, of course, I used that to come up with a very short presentation for us. So I'm going to take us through this presentation, and let's see whether your expectations have been met. So I will now share my screen so that we begin. And as I'm sharing my screen, let me know whether there are any concerns, any queries before we proceed. As we do that, also just let me know whether you can see my screen. I need to know whether my screen can be seen. Anyone that can see my screen on theirs?
Yes, yes, we can. Yes, I can.
Good. Yeah, so allow me to take us through this brief presentation. So I want us to begin the understanding of the PBO Act in the context of 2010 Constitution. My colleague Nelima has also alluded to this, but it is important for us to understand this from a right-based approach. When we are engaging on our association and of course in the spaces where we are, and of course specifically focusing on the PBO Act, it is important to look at some two articles which are very instrumental in the work that we do. Article 36 of the Constitution and Article 27 of the Constitution. Article 36 of the Constitution is very important because then it changed how registered organizations and groups are managed from 2010, when we had our constitution promulgated. Before then the country would behave the way they had been behaving, by deregistering, by freezing bank accounts. So the PBO Act was enacted to give life to Article 36 of the Constitution. People have gone to court, and the court have always reaffirmed that Article 36 is instrumental, and it reaffirmed that every person had a right to form and join association, and the state has no role in arbitrarily denying registrations. We have seen in some cases where you attempt to register and the regulator tells you that you cannot register. Registration can only be denied if there is reasonable and justifiable grounds which are equivalent to the standards prescribed by this Constitution, that is Constitution 2010. The courts have always supported organizations or groups that have been denied registration based on this article. We will, of course, at some point, towards the end of this presentation, we will look at one of the cases that was taken to court by Eric. Eric was the executive director of National Coalition of Gays in Kenya, and that court went up to the Supreme Court. And of course, it was so instrumental in 2023-2024 because it compelled the regulator to register that national coalition. Again, Article 96 makes it very clear that before you deregister, before you cancel the registration of any organization, there must be a fair hearing. Previously, again, that had not been happening. The government would wake up and you find yourself deregistered, your bank accounts frozen. Now, Article 27 is very, very, very important, especially for our groups here today, because these organizings have been subjected to discrimination, have been subjected to stigma. If they are exercising their fundamental right under Article 27 on non-discrimination. Courts, of course, then have interpreted Article 27 to include protection against discrimination based on sexual orientation. Even though it is not expressly listed there, the spirit of the Constitution was that non-discrimination would be as blanket as to ensure that nobody would be discriminated based on sexual orientation. Whether you are male, female, whether you fall within the LGBTIQ plus community or organizing, that, of course, the courts have said should not be the basis for discrimination when it comes to organizing and when it comes to freedom of association. Again, under this section, it has been indicated and prescribed that the state, and when we talk about the state, it means the government, any government representative, any government organ, any government agency, have no business to discriminate directly or indirectly against a person. Of course, when you talk about a person, we both mean a natural person, that is me and you. We also mean a legal person, that includes the organizations we represent. That the state cannot discriminate against a person on any ground, including sex. And when you talk about sex, we also mean sexual orientation, amongst all the other listed factors that there. So it is important that as we discuss the PBO Act, these two articles should always remain at the back of our minds, that you are organizing yourself within groups that cannot be discriminated, should not be discriminated, because you realize, and probably some of you can also share their experiences about the horrific nature of engagement during registration of LGBTIQ organizing, either with the Department of Social Services, Social Development, or even with the PBO Regulatory Authority, previously called the NGO Board. So we know that the regulators and the government have been very reluctant towards registration of these groups. But then going forward, we will be mirroring these two articles. Article 37, that you cannot be discriminated on sexual orientation, but also Article 36, that gives you the right to form and join any association, and that the state cannot just, without any reason, deny you registration or decide to deregister you. Having said that, I will not go to the history because Nalima has already mentioned. This law, of course, was signed or assented to by the former late President Mwai Kibaki a few months before he left office, January 2013. In January 2013, on 14th, Honorable Kibaki signed the PBO Act in law. Unfortunately, the PBO Act did not have a commencement date, and it took more than two regimes. It took more than 10 years for this law to start working. It took those 11 years and 4 months for the PBO Act to be commenced, to be given a commencement date. For those 11 years, it was battle after battle. Civil society, NGOs, engaging with government, asking them to commence the law, NGOs and civil society going to courts giving orders for the cabinet ministers to commence the law, round tables. We also had promises after promises by the successive regimes that they were going to commence the PBO Act. The current regime, of course, in their manifesto, they had expressly stated, if you look at the current Kenya Kwanza manifesto on page 60, 61, they had committed they were going to commence the PBO Act. Fortunately enough, the UN made a decision to host the UN Civil Society Conference in Africa for the first time since the UN was formed. The Civil Society Congress of the UN was hosted in Nairobi in 2024, May, on 9th and 10th. And that is when the civil society decided to mount pressure on the government to commence the PBO Act. And so on 14th of May, 2 years ago, the PBO Act became operational on May 14th, 2024. On that day of commencement, the NGO Coordination Act, that is the NGO Act of 1990, which was the one that was regulating NGOs, stopped functioning for purposes of our understanding. In legal term, we say it was repealed. So the 1990 law stopped working on 14th of May. It became defunct. It got repealed on 14th of May. When PBO Act started working, the NGO Coordination Act stopped working. The regulator, before PBO stopped working, the regulator was called the NGO Board, or NGO's Coordination Board. The NGO's Coordination Board on 14th of May, when PBO Act when it became operational, the board changed its name automatically and it became the PBO's Regulatory Authority. You will hear people calling it PBORA or PBORA. So instead of NGO board, now we have PBORA or the authority or PBO's regulatory authority. So from 14th of May, the authority got a new name, PBORA or the regulatory authority. On the same date, NGOs were given until 14th of May 2025, that was last year, May, to apply for registration afresh. So in that act, it had compelled all the NGOs that were registered under the NGO law of 1990 to apply for registration afresh. But that section did not go well with NGOs. NGOs went to court in 2024, and last year in March, on 30th of April, last year, 2025, the High Court declared the requirement for fresh registration as unconstitutional, and therefore the High Court compelled the authority or PBORA to allow all NGOs to automatically become PBOs without applying for fresh registrations. So what that meant was that come the deadline of 14th May last year, all NGOs were supposed to automatically become PBOs, and they were not supposed to be subjected to fresh application for registration, only that the regulations needed to support with new forms so that then the NGOs that were already registered could apply for new certificates without paying fees. So if you are already registered before 2024 May, you will only need to take a form, fill in your details, pay 0 shillings, and wait for a new certificate. That is now according to the court declaration last year. But because last year we did not have regulations, and regulations are the ones that also indicate fees to be paid, regulations are also supposed to expound more on the forms that are supposed to be used for applications. The government extended the deadline from May last year to May this year on 14th. That gives us approximately 3 weeks from today. 3 weeks from today for all registered NGOs to fill in those transition forms and get new certificates at 0 costs. That process is expected to be done online, but we have challenges because the government e-citizen portal still do not have the new forms. It is still operated under the old law, NGO's Coordination Act of 1990. And so that portal on e-citizen cannot be used, should not be used, and you should not be asked to use it because it's an illegal portal. The authority is aware that it is illegal. They are working towards building a new system so that people can apply for registration. What we have been asked several times is, what does that mean for the deadline? And what that means for the deadline is that we will be trying again, like last year, to push for extension of that deadline because the government, even if they don't push the deadline, it means that no one can be penalized if you are already registered as an NGO. The courts had already said that you will automatically become PBOs. But then what it means is that it will delay our new registration certificates until the e-citizen portal is changed and new forms are uploaded in that. Now, that is for the NGOs that were registered under the NGOs Coordination Act, and they were answerable to the NGOs Coordination Board. But we know that there are other charities, we have other civil society members that are not registered, that were not registered under the NGOs Act of 1990. We had CBOs, we had self-help groups, we had company limited by guarantee, we had trust, we had associations. All these were registered under other laws. So what does it mean for them? Does this law affect them? Does the PBO Act affect them in any way? Are they required to do anything? And I know majority of the people, of the respondents, as I've said, 74% in this meeting are community-based organizations and self-help groups and company limited by guarantees. So those groups are not directly affected by the PBO Act, but what it means is that you have actually three options. You can decide to just remain a CBO where you are. You can decide that you are comfortable where you are and you don't want to be disturbed by the PBO Act. No one will come for you. No one will compel you to register under the PBO Act. No one. Option two is that you can decide that because now you know that PBOs have several benefits, that you also want to enjoy the benefits under the PBO Act. You can decide that I still want to remain a CBO. I still want to remain company limited by guarantee. I still want to remain a self-help group. I still want to remain a trust. But I still also want to enjoy what PBOs are enjoying. You can decide that you still want to be you, but you also want to enjoy what the PBOs are enjoying. In that case, you will be allowed to apply for something called bestowment, which means that you are telling the authority that you want to remain a CBO, but you also enjoy the benefits of PBOs. So you apply for bestowment. You are given a bestowment certificate. So you have two certificates. You have the CBO certificate and you also have the PBO bestowment certificate. Bestowment certificate, you can only get it on condition that where you are also complying with the laws there. You are also complying with the obligations as a CBO. Your certificate has been renewed. You don't have pending cases with your regulator, so you get a bestowment certificate. And your CBO can only be given a bestowment certificate if what you do as a CBO is to benefit members of the public, not if you're benefiting only members of your group, but if you're benefiting public, the citizens, then you are given bestowment certificate. Bestowment certificate can be withdrawn at any time if the regulator believes that you are not complying with the terms and conditions, which means that you must continue complying with the law. You are also allowed to say you are tired being a CBO, you are tired being a company limited by guarantee, you are tired being a self-help group, you just want to be a PBO. So you can apply to be a PBO, and if you apply to be a PBO and you get the registration certificate, your certificate as a CBO will be invalid. Your certificate will be invalid. Remember, if you get a bestowment certificate, you retain your original certificate and you also get the bestowment certificate. Nothing happens to your CBO certificate. But if you say, I just want to be a PBO and you get registered, your original certificate as a PBO will be invalid. So you will only now be a PBO. Now, for all this, no one should pressure you. It is purely voluntary. You can decide to just remain where you are. No one will come for you, as I had stated as at the beginning. You can decide to be given the bestowment or to register as a PBO, or you can decide I am remaining where I am. All those decisions, no one can tell you this is the deadline. There is no deadline, no timeline attached to it. So again, a decision to make there. Now, for those that wanted to know what the benefits are if you register as a PBO or if you get bestowment, if you get a bestowment certificate or if you register as a PBO, sasa serikali itakupatia exemptions on taxes, several taxes actually. Even though we know that the current government is really trying as much as possible to collect taxes, but the PBO Act tells us that if you register under it, or if you get the bestowment certificate, then the income that you receive from members or donors will not be taxed. It also guarantees us that if we engage in income generating activities, if we do business, we will not be charged tax for the income that we receive. So probably you have a house where you can earn rent, you have poultry business where you earn income. Those income will not be taxed so long as the profit you receive is coming back to the organization to achieve the vision and mission of that organization. So you cannot use the profit for personal gain. You cannot use the profit to just go and entertain friends. You can only use the profit, which is now untaxed, for the mandate of the organization. Of course, you can pay rent, you can pay salaries, you can also support activities, but it cannot be for personal gain. You cannot use the profit from your business as an organization to buy a personal vehicle. Again, some organizations that will be doing investments, sometimes you put your money in fixed deposit account. Sometimes you put your money or your funds in SACCOs, so they bear interest and dividends. Those interest and dividends will not be taxed if you are a PBO or if you have been bestowed PBO status. If you sell land, if you sell property, you will be exempted from paying stamp duty as tax. And if you decide to go to court to file a case on behalf of the company, of course, public interest litigation, the court will waive court fees. Remember, court fees are not fees that you pay your advocate. These are purely just the fees that you are charged when you are filing your case in court. However, we need to understand that these benefits are not automatic. They require you to be compliant with the law. They require you to comply with all the other regulators, KRA, NSSF, NHIF, all those other laws. You comply with the reporting, comply with audits. That is when you can get a letter from the authority to KRA so that you can be exempted from tax. Now, there are additional benefits still, some still taxation. If you are importing goods or if you are importing services from abroad across borders, you will be exempted from paying custom duty. Again, you'll be exempted from VAT. You will be given preferential treatment. So if other people, let's say, are paying 20% VAT or custom duty, then probably the government would be friendly to you and probably give you less than 20%. So you pay cheaper, you pay lower rates. You will also get incentives if you give donations as an organization. Employment taxation will be, you will be given preference on on employment tax. There will be incentives for people to give donations to form endowments. Endowment funds are the funds or money that we invest for a rainy day. So we put money away. The money will earn interest. It will earn dividends. Then those dividends or interest can be recouped to support paying, let's say, rent, salaries, overheads, admin costs. Now, the PBO Act also now allows PBOs to be given direct funding from government. And the only condition is that for you to get direct funding from government, you must be partnering with government agencies. So you must prove that you have a partnership with government agencies. The other thing is that just like PWDs, women and youth, again, now we fall under that category. We will be given preferential treatment when it comes to government tenders. Of course, women, youth, and PWDs have the 30% of tenders to them. For PBOs, if you declare that you are a PBO, then you are expected to be given a priority in a tendering process. So again, we've been allowed to engage in tendering, public tenders, government bids to get resources that can sustain us. We have also been given another benefit that it will be now easy to access information from government agencies if they are contributing to policy processes. And finally, that where government is offering training in government institutions, we also can have equal access to those training courses, just like other government agencies. So if there are any training courses that are held in government institutions like Kenya School of Government, Agricultural Training Institutes, we are also allowed to access them, but the law does not say that you access them for free. But now we are allowed to access them. We can also enjoy. Now, let's look at our step-to-step registration or bestowment process. There are several documents that you need to put in place first before you even begin the process of registration or asking for bestowment. You need to ensure that first you have a draft constitution that has been approved. You need to ensure that you've already done name search and your name search has been reserved, usually reserved for 60 days. After that, then now you proceed to submit your application. After your application has been received, the PBORA or the regulator will consider your application within 60 days. Not after 60 days, within 60 days, which means it can be done within a week, the second week, within the second month, within the third month, but not after the third month. You're supposed to get your certificate of registration within 60 days, not third month, sorry. These are 2 months. So within 2 months, you're supposed to get your certificate, or you are supposed to get a written rejection, not just a rejection. The practice has been that if the regulator hataki kukupatia registration certificate, I'm assuming all of us can hear Swahili, so sometimes I end up mixing Swahili and English. So within 60 days, the authority, if they are rejecting your application, they are supposed to do it in writing. Previously, they have just been saying, we cannot register that one. ama wanakuambia hiyo jina tupendi, we don't like that name, go change it and bring it back. Now they have to give us reasons why in writing, reasons why they have rejected your application. Remember, Article 36 of the Constitution, they cannot deny you freedom to associate without justifiable reasons. Some of the reasons why your application can be rejected is if your name is similar to another name that has already been registered, if your name is similar with another government institution, if your name is perceived to be similar to another political party. So if you already have Wiper Party of Kenya or ODM, you cannot register ODM as an NGO again. etc. If the authority detects that you have submitted information that is fraudulent, information that has been obtained without permission, probably of members. If you submit names of directors that are not even aware that names have been submitted, then they can reject your application. But they must write it down. They must say, we are rejecting your application because of A, B, C, and D. So that then you can use that rejection to appeal to the tribunal, which we will talk about at some point. Otherwise, you get a registration certificate throughout Kenya. Every PBO can operate throughout the country, not just in specific counties. Now, your registration will remain valid. You don't need to renew like CBOs. It is valid unless it has been cancelled, unless you decide to voluntarily deregister yourself. You decide to dissolve your group. Nasema either tumechoka, ama hatuna pesa, ama we have already achieved what we wanted, so you are dissolving your registration. Otherwise, it needs to remain valid throughout. When you have your registration certificate, you are expected to be compliant with the reporting requirements. You are supposed to, within the first 6 months now, you are supposed to submit your report, narrative report, and a financial report. If you have more than if you received more than $1 million in the previous year, then you must do an audit. If you did not receive $1 million and above, you don't have to do an audit. You just do a narrative report. So you must comply with the reporting obligation, submit all the annual reports, submit financial statements or audit reports. Otherwise, you should not have a problem if you adhere to the requirements on this act and also on your constitution. You must also adhere to your constitution. So for example, if your constitution said that you are supposed to be holding AGM every 2 years, hold that AGM every 2 years. Otherwise, if you violate your constitution, you can also be deregistered. If you violate the PBO Act, you can also be deregistered. In 2024, December, 2,802 PBOs were deregistered for not complying with reporting. Some had not reported for 15 years, some for 1 year. But the idea is they have not been complying, and so they got deregistered. Now, I'm not sure whether this is eligible. If your screen is big enough, probably you should be in a position to see this new regulations, first schedule fees. These are what have been proposed in the first schedule of the new regulations now, the PBO regulations of 2026. If you are doing a name search, it's 1,000 shillings. usually you can extend the reservation for the first 60 days. Ziki expire kama hujamaliza application, you can ask for the regulator to extend for another 60 days. If you want that to happen, you must pay another 1,000. If you are now registering a national PBO, you pay 25,000. If you apply just for bestowment, you pay 20,000. If you want to register an international organization, you pay 75,000. If you want to, at some point, I'll talk about self-regulation forums, which are networks, and I know we belong to different networks. The law, of course, PBO Act, foresaw a process where organizations can form forums or networks, and you would want probably your network to be recognized, and there are requirements which we will look at. If you want your forum or your network to be recognized, you apply by paying 10,000 Kenya shillings. Several networks can also merge to form a federation of forums. Let me give an example. If you are in Mombasa, maybe there is a gender network, there is a youth network, maybe there is let's say seafarers network, maybe there is another network or whatever name. All these networks can form, let's say, Mombasa Civil Society Network or Forum. Now, in this new law, when different networks come together, you call that a federation of forums. So maybe if you also want that federation to be recognized, you will have to pay 20,000. When you are submitting the annual reports, you pay 2,000. If you want to change an official signatory to the account, you want to change, no, you just want to change an official, maybe chair, secretary, treasurer. You've done an election or just appointed a new official. Then you pay 4,000. For those organizations that have bank agents, authorized bank agents that can go to withdraw or receive money on behalf of the organization, if you want to change, maybe it was your accountant, they have now left the organization, you've brought in a new accountant, you need them to be now the new authorized agent, you pay 20,000 shillings. So let us try as much as possible not to change agents, because then we'll be paying more and more. If they are accountants, let's find ways of working with them longer. If you want to change banking arrangement, maybe a new bank account, an additional bank account, you pay 4,000. Change of name, you don't like your name, you are changing course, you think the name needs to adjust, 15,000 for a national PBO. For an international PBO, 27,500. Maybe you want to change your constitution, something that you forgot or something that the constitution need to adapt to, you pay 4,000. You want to change any other, change any, you want to make changes in your network of forum or your federation of forums, you pay 5,000. You want to replace as a registration certificate, you pay 10,000. You want to make certified copies of anything like certificate, constitution, you pay 4,000. If you want the authority to look for something in your file that you do not have, you pay 4,000. And if you want to certify anything again other than just the registration certificate, 1,400. Now, closely linked to registration is a process. Of course, I've already mentioned that you're supposed to get your registration within 60 days. But if the 60 days expires and you don't get your registration, or you don't even get a rejection, you are supposed to appeal. You are applying to the tribunal. We have a tribunal, which is a special court for PBOs. You apply to them, ask them to order the authority to issue the registration certificate. So they will communicate that to the authority. They'll ask the authority to either give you a certificate or tell you why they have refused to give you the certificate in writing. Then remember, you can also be suspended. I also already mentioned this. We must remember our Constitution, Article 36, that you cannot be suspended without being given the right to be heard, the right to a fair hearing. So PBO Act gives us 15 days. It says that the authority must give you 15 days notice so that when they ujitetee, you go to the authority to defend yourself and to show cause as to why you should not be suspended, why you should not be deregistered. And after you have already been given that chance, after the 15 days, you've gone, umejitetea, then the PBO authority can make a decision. But if you receive a decision that you don't like, within 60 days, you're allowed to go to the tribunal to say you do not like the decision of the authority to suspend or to cancel your registration. Within 30 days, the tribunal will make a decision. So there are timelines. So the tribunal cannot drag your case for 1 year, for 2 years. It is given 30 days only. And I said that you can only be suspended or cancelled if you violate the PBO Act or if you carry out activities that are contrary to your constitution. Let's look at our special court. We have a special court called PBO's Dispute Tribunal. The members are supposed to be appointed by the Chief Justice and approved by members of the Assembly, just like what the President does, nominates cabinet secretaries, then wanaenda bungeni, National Assembly for vetting and approval, then of course finally they're appointed. Now, for the members of this special court, they are appointed by the Chief Justice and approved by the National Assembly. This court has two main mandates. One mandate is to hear complaints that will arise from people or the authority if it breaches this act. If the authority violates this act or if the PBOs violate this act, then this is the court that will hear those cases. This court will also hear and determine matters or appeal made. So, I mean, the PBO authority has already made a decision. You are allowed to appeal to this court. Now, this court has powers of a junior court or a subordinate court like the magistrate court. And this tribunal or special court, once it makes its decision, you can only appeal to the High Court, and that High Court, I mean, if you don't like the High Court order, it can't go to the Court of Appeal and Supreme Court. It cannot proceed there because this is a special court. For special courts like tribunals, you can only appeal mara moja. You only appeal to the High Court, and that's it. If once the High Court makes that decision, there is no other place that you can proceed to beyond that. You can't proceed to appeal, Court of Appeal, and also you can't also proceed to the Supreme Court. Now, almost finalizing is self-regulation forums. Self-regulation forums are just networks. Like we've mentioned, we already belong to several networks. This law calls those networks forums. Now, each organization registered under the PBO Act can actually join and maintain a membership in a forum. This forum will have to develop what is called a code of conduct, which all members must sign. After the code of conduct has been adopted by members, the code of conduct must be within the Constitution, which means that you cannot have a code of conduct that violates the Constitution of Kenya. You cannot have a code of conduct that violates the PBO Act. So you prepare a code of conduct, members of your network looks at it, approves, and then each member signs. The forum can now, of course, organize itself with other forums to form federation of forums, or it can just remain as one forum. Now, your network or your forum may decide that they want a recognition from the authority. They want maybe a recognition certificate from the authority. So they are allowed to apply for recognition only if all members have signed their code of conduct. And majority of members are registered PBO. So it means that if you are forming a network, if you want to get a recognition agreement, most of the members in that network must be PBOs. I know most of our networks members are CBOs. But if we want recognition under this law, then most of the members in that forum must be PBOs. Now, if you apply for recognition, you will pay 20,000 Kenya shillings to get a recognition agreement with the government. Of course, you can use the recognition agreement for fundraising and other things. What are now the opportunities and what can we do as the LGBTIQ plus organizing during this transition? During this transition, we must position ourselves to ensure that our organizations are complying with all the laws, are complying with all the obligations. We prepare to also continue complying with those obligations, because what the government is also positioning itself to do is to clamp down on the organizations they don't like. We know that in Kenya, the organizations that are on the government's high risk status, one is LGBTIQ plus organizing. Two is any organization that is pushing for accountability on corruption, accountability on police brutality, accountability on mismanagement of funds. Any organization that is pushing for reforms are always in the government's black book radar are always in the black book radar for government, which means that they will leave you to operate so long as you are not, so long as you are not too near to its borders. When you brush with them the wrong way, then they will look for easier way of ensuring that you are eliminated. And because they cannot deregister you, they can't freeze your account because you are an LGBTIQ organizing, they will look for other ways. They will ask KRA to find out whether you have been paying taxes, whether you have been remitting pay as you earn, whether you have a KRA PIN, whether you have submitting withholding tax for payments to consultants above 24,000. They'll ask NSSF to check whether you have been remitting NSSF deductions, the right percentage to NSSF. They will ask SHA to confirm whether you are deducting and submitting. Some organizations deduct and don't submit. They'll ask SHA to determine whether you have been submitting those deductions and whether those deductions are of the right percentages. They will ask the housing team to see whether you have been submitting the housing levy. And organizations have received letters, demand letters. In 2024, after the Gen Z movement, I know several organizations that received letters from KRA because they were asking questions about police killings in Kisumu, for example. And these are CBOs, not the big ones, and not the highs and the mighties. Not the high and the mighty, I mean, not the cream de la cream of Kenyan civil society. These are organizations that were formed less than 5 years ago, have been questioning police brutality, and they are community-based organization. They were shocked to receive letters from KRA. So the opportunity is for us to ensure that legal compliance is at the top. We need to ensure that every year we are submitting reports and we are meeting those deadlines. If we are receiving money more than $1 million, we must ensure that we have audits done and keep records. Always keep records for a minimum of 7 years. If you can, digitize them if you can. You don't have to keep the papers, but you can, of course, with technology, scan, upload, keep digital copies. Otherwise, the government may still come for you. Other organizations did not even receive notification from DCI. They received notifications from, demand letters from banks, their banks, asking them to provide more information about sources of funds, asking more information about some of their suppliers in the pretext of checking on anti-money laundering and terrorism financing. Organizations have also gotten direct summons from DCI. So if you are not complying with the legal obligations, then you are adding an extra risk to the already a risk burden that you are carrying as an LGBTIQ organizing. Just by identifying as an LGBTIQ organizing, you already are wearing a risk tag for stigma, for harassment by conservatives and some of the religious leaders and some of the government. And so if you're not complying with the law, you are adding to that risk bag an extra weight. So one of the opportunity here is for us to clean house and ensure compliance. Again, as CFF and I think even INED, we can always support to ensure that your house is in order. Also, when you are engaging with stakeholders and regulators, let us remember Article 36 of the Constitution and Article 27 of the Constitution, that we are exercising our rights within the Constitution, that we've done nothing wrong by registering these organizations. No one should tell you that you cannot register. Quote those sections, let them respond in writing. So let us engage from a right-based advocacy, not just by making noise, but by reminding them of the constitutional requirement. The other thing is, again, institutional strengthening. Let us invest in financial system that, of course, some people have QuickBooks, some people have other systems that can help them improve on financial accountability. We have organizations that have lost their future fortunes because of weak financial systems, because of fraud. This may seem too far from the PBO and transition, but how government is also working with some donors is to help identifying fraud cases, issues around mismanagement of funds, and forwarding it to donors without donors requesting, so that then you can be blacklisted, especially if you've been tagged as troublesome by government. You always having a dissenting voice, so government will do that work on behalf of a donor that has not even requested the government to do it for them. So they will get all the information from the beneficiaries that you work with. Let us be careful about safeguarding issues around sexual exploitation of our beneficiaries and even within our institutions. We have seen examples of organizations where they are not even aware how the donors got information that of things that were happening within their offices. But remember, the government is always listening through our computers, through our emails, checking through our emails, listening through our phones, our smart TVs, our smart watches, our smart glasses. The government is always listening. We have government spies within our organizations that operate as though they are our colleagues, as though they are our friends. We have beneficiaries that we meet in the field or workshop that we think they're just workshop participants, but they are government spies. They will take information back. And so if we are engaging in activities that violate safeguarding principles, sexual harassment, labor law violations. I know some of us watch a lot of movies, and so you can wake up one morning and fire a staff without due process. We have other organizations that also do not follow our basic HR processes. No leaves, no sick leaves, no paternity leave, no maternity leaves. Don't trust your staff members. Don't trust anybody. Follow those processes. The government can always use anyone because, again, it's the only way, the only legal way they can use to eliminate LGBTIQ organizing. They can't go to court to have you deregistered. They can't go to court to get your bank frozen just because you are an LGBTIQ organizing. But what we've seen in the past is government using the legal ways on compliance to ensure that you are suspended, frozen, denied funding. Again, I was happy to hear that Nelima Esther is a program officer responsible for collectives. Usually, again, it's a very important strategic alliances. Let us not work alone. Let us not walk alone. Let us form alliances. Let us join networks. Let us join forums. Those are the only cushion we have. It is easier to make a press statement or a press conference, hold a press conference as a team than as an individual, because if you hold it as a team, it is difficult for every member of that team to be targeted. But if you go alone, it's very easy for you to be singled out by government and be targeted within this new era. The PBO protects you, but the government uses all the other available legal opportunities to eliminate you. So again, an opportunity for us to join our several forums. You don't just have to join the LGBTIQ organizing spaces. We also have other spaces like CFF. We have other spaces like Okoa Uchumi. We have other spaces like Integrity Alliance, several. We have county networks. Let us join those spaces. Let us work as a team. It's very important because then they will help protect us as a collective. The other final thing for us is to ensure that we continuously monitor our internal mechanisms. So we may want to establish risk management mechanisms, monitor what risks are we likely to face internally with our policies, externally, political risks, and regularly assess those risks, mitigation measures. These things keep on changing, and so we can then allow the risk management mechanism allows us to continuously ensure that we are aware of the risk, we are put in place mitigation measures, and of course, finally, we ensure that we live through the realities as they unfold. Allow me to finally reflect on a case that began in 2013. Eric Gitari walked into the offices of the NGO's Coordination Board and tells them that he was interested in registering an organization. He was given forms to fill. He was told to submit the documents required. When he submitted those documents and the board, NGO board, saw the word gay and the word lesbian in their name, the National Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission, they refused to register. And they told Mr. Eric Gitari that we are not registering you unless you remove the word gay, unless you remove the word lesbian from your name. Otherwise, we are not registering. They also said that same-sex unions have been, are criminal in the penal code of Kenya, and so they cannot register an organization that allows for that to happen. Mr. Eric moved to court in 2013 to the High Court. The High Court, of course, ruled in his favor. The High Court indicated that the NGO board could not discriminate a group merely on the basis of their sexual orientation. And of course, they were referring to Article 27 of the Constitution. They also indicated that mere registration of a group of same-sex did not necessarily mean that the board was now allowing for that to happen. They also said that everybody is allowed to form and join any association of their choice. Article 36 of the Constitution. So the NGO board were not satisfied. They appealed in 2015, and 4 years later, the Court of Appeal upheld the decision of the High Court and said, we agree with the High Court, you cannot discriminate Mr. Eric just because of the name gay and lesbian. The board was still not satisfied and they moved to the Supreme Court. And again, the Supreme Court gave the final determination, which could not be appealed anywhere else. And the Supreme Court agreed with the High Court, agreed with the Court of Appeal, and affirmed the right to the freedom from non-discrimination. Freedom of non-discrimination, that you cannot be discriminated based on your sexual orientation. And that has been a basis of, and that should be a basis of our advocacy going forward when you are going to register and you encounter similar challenge like Mr. Eric. This court decision should always be our song. We need to sing it over and over again to the regulators. Now, there are also other ways of registering again, and I think from the case of Eric, some organizations, some of us are already aware that there is another national coalition called GALC, which is again another LGBTIQ organizing coalition at the national level. When they saw the case of Gitari, they decided to do their registration different. They decided that GALC is going to be their trading name, but for purposes of registration, they did not feature the names, the words gays, lesbian, LGBTIQ anywhere. And so they were registered And like most of us, again, as I saw in our registration titles, for most of the groups, the term LGBTIQ does not appear as a political strategy for registration. However, even if you decide, because you are not supposed to be to be discriminated just because of your sexual orientation. If you decide to go with the strategy by Eric Gitari, always remember that you have the Constitution by your side. You have the Supreme Court decision of 2023 on your side. But on the opposing side, you have government led by the current regime that has made it very clear that they do not support LGBTIQ organizing in Kenya. They have labeled it as an international imposition by the West. They have said it is not African. They've given all the negative narratives on this. At the end of the day, of course, they've been with the church in the development of that narrative, and some of the legislators, some of our parliamentarians that we elected and celebrated, have also tried to introduce bills in parliament, like the Family Protection Bill, that has never seen the light of day, to just ensure that they criminalize this kind of organizing. We have our neighbors in Uganda that have, of course, criminalized any organizing on sexual orientation. They have also just introduced another new bill, of course, to ensure that you can never receive funding from outside the country. And if you receive funding from outside the country, then you will be considered a foreign agent and be jailed for a minimum of 20 years. Those are our neighbors. And of course, anything that happens at your neighbor's house is likely to spill over to your house. We are still blessed with our courts and the Constitution. We are hoping that those bills, even if enacted, we will still go to court and block them. So having said that, I want us to relax, reflect. Before I say asanteni sana, let's see whether we have any questions. Let's see whether we have any context. Any feedback. If you have gone through any experiences with your registration from your regulators at CBO level, at NGO or PBO level, let us hear those testimonies during this plenary time. Nelima, I'm not sure about time. I know we started 40 minutes late in terms of into the presentation, so I'm not sure how long the plenary should go. Of course, we've not seen how many questions are up yet, but you can guide us in terms of how much time we can spill over.
Thank you. Thank you so much, John, for that detailed presentation. I know people, wherever they are looking forward for the quick Q&A. And personally, I have a lot that I need it addressed. And I know there's a question in the Q&A, and there's a comment, I think, in the chat box. So if you allow me to read, and then we can respond.
Yes. Yeah, you can proceed.
Okay. Okay. So they're just they're saying that they're appreciating you for a very informative presentation. Some are really shocked. And personally, I'm shocked about the costs. It's sounding like a way of extortion, like every stage of the way, their monies you have to let go. You have to release. And I think I even shared a comment that given the shrinking space that we have, and organizations are barely surviving,
Yeah.
and having such a kind of regulations, especially in terms of monetary, it's really wanting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe you'll talk about that some bit. There's a question here. I'm curious on why one would want to be exempted from registering as an international organization.
Mhm.
So there's that question, and a comment has come in. Hey, it's biting us. It's biting and Kupuli's at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so the same. You know, when you're saying that you can be exempted in the income tax, you can be exempted in this, and then you have an opportunity to invest and generate income for the organization. I was like, wow, this is very thoughtful given the current environment of funding. But now when
Yeah.
you look at the other hand, where you mentioned
Yeah.
about the taxes, it's it's really something. So maybe
Yeah.
before you respond, I had a question. So where you talked about member subscription, how do you? So you talked about taxes, about the exemption of taxes. So how are
Yeah.
these? How is this proven? For example, um, like currently, I know when we are filing for our returns, especially for consultant, you are told to give evidence of how did you use the 70%. Actually, not the 70%, it was the 95%, whereby the organization has withheld 5%, and then now you get the 95. And very interestingly, when people are filing returns, one of the consultants that did some work for us last year called me and they're like, I have to justify or else I pay the 25%.
Mm.
I'm just looking at
Yeah.
that, given the current context that you have shared, how will the justification look like? The other thing was around narrative reports. Goodness, already we are overwhelmed by the donor reports. And here we are with to give narrative reports. So are there
Yes.
templates already formulated or it's still in discussion? And how will it look like, And this goes to especially when your expenditure is above 1 million. So look forward for that. And then when submitting the same report, you're paying 2,000.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And then the issue about fees. So maybe you can comment on that. I don't know if there's any other thing. Yeah, just comments about, yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So maybe you can give comments on that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you. I mean, when this act was enacted, people celebrated for a few days. And then when we went back to to actually now keenly look at the act, then we realized, oh, so there's a double-edged sword. On one side, it's showing you so much. It's giving you so many incentives, tax incentives. And then when we started looking at how will this be implemented, even the tax exemptions, even the tax exemptions as benefits for registration. We already know that currently we are with a regime that is looking for every possibility to collect tax. We are increasing taxes from all corners, introducing new ones. So the conversation currently with KRA has been very interesting because, again, even though PBO Act lists all these exemptions, the only institution that can exempt you from taxation is KRA in consultation with the Treasury. And we have the political and financial debates around whether the country is meeting its tax targets. So if if the civil society is already one of the tax targets, and they are not giving enough, how do we still also give them a whole list of exemptions from taxes? Will we ever meet our tax obligations? Those are some of the political discussions within government. Now, for us, even currently before the PBO Act to get a tax exemption certificate, it takes almost 3 years for you to get a tax exemption certificate. Now, the discussion when the regulations were being made was that the authority, the PBORA, that is the PBO's regulatory authority, was going to write letters. If you request for a letter to help you be exempted from tax, then the PBO's regulatory authority would write a letter to KRA to, of course, tell them the good work that you have been doing, so that then KRA can shorten the time of investigations into your work, so that then they can easily grant you a tax exemption certificate. Now, we have a case where we know that the authority is an extension of government. The PBO's regulatory authority currently has constituted the chair of the board, and also the executive director are former UDA aspirants, and the CEO comes from the same constituency as the Cabinet Secretary Interior, who is the right-hand man of our president. Our president has always made it very clear that the LGBTIQ organizing is out of his priority list. So I'm trying to imagine a situation where INED or any LGBTIQ organizing goes to the authority to request for tax exemption, and they're supposed to demonstrate to KRA the good work that the group or the organizing has been doing. We are very sure that they would drag their feet, that they would not even probably write that letter. And when you write to KRA directly, that process takes 3 to 5 years for you to get a 5-year exemption certificate. So by the time you get your exemption certificate, it's 5 years, takes 5 years again, then you begin the process again. So implementation of this act is going to be very problematic, especially with different groups. If World Vision request for a tax exemption, it's very easy for them to get it because they work in service sector. If your organization is sinking boreholes, if your organization is supporting to take people to hospital, give sponsorship to children, help during flood response and drought response, in the service sector, you get quick support from government. But if the work that we do is governance, democracy, and the Bill of Rights, the political rights specifically, then we are in for a hot soup, especially when we are looking to benefit from imagine we want to get funding from government. And I'm trying to imagine that INED is requesting for funding from government, for example, and whether that is going to be possible. The law says the government should directly finance local civil society. Will that be implemented? How will it be implemented? If we have a government that do not appreciate LGBTIQ organizing and democracy and governance work, again, those benefits are also as political as the regime in place. If we have a Kibaki in power, probably, then we have a softer spot and it's easier. But if we have regimes like the current one, it becomes extremely difficult to reap those benefits. Now, usually, even for community-based organization, we know the institutional capacity, and that is why in their current mode of operations, they were only required to go and renew the certificate by getting a stamp. But the current legislation is requiring for narrative reports, is requiring for financial reports. Most of our community groups have no capacity to do a financial report. Most of them don't even have financial capacity to employ an auditor to do an audited account. So you can imagine if they probably got 1.5 million for activities and they must still spare 100 or 200,000 for an audit so that then they can submit. It becomes extremely financially heavy on their side. It becomes extremely heavy. Now, there was a question around exemption from registration by international organization. International organizations are allowed to operate in Kenya under the PBO Act on two ways. One of those ways is by registering and getting a registration certificate. But the second way is by getting a permit to operate. So you just get a permit and you begin operation. Now, you can only get a permit if you are an international organization that will not implement. They are organizations that don't do direct implementation. They probably only maybe dispatch money to other organizations, and those organizations are the ones that implement. So maybe I'm an international organization, I have resources, I only give grants to organizations around Kenya. Those local organizations will be the one implementing. So I don't need a registration certificate if I will not be directly implementing. In Kenya, or even if I'm based in Kenya and I'm implementing in neighboring countries, I can't be given a permit. So you must say that you are not an implementer. You are not a direct implementer for you to get a permit. Another justification for you to get a permit is when you are not going to get membership subscription from members in Kenya. There are organizations that are membership in nature. Let me give an example of an international organization that is membership in nature. There is one called Civicus. Civicus is a membership organization, and different categories of members have different obligations. So they are also paying members. So if you are Civicus and some of your members will be paying membership subscription, then in Kenya you cannot be given a permit, because you'll be getting money from organizations and members in Kenya. So you can get a permit if you're not going to implement in Kenya and you're not going to get membership subscription in Kenya. So then you are just given a permit just to operate. Maybe uko tu na pesa, you just want to give, just want to subgrant organizations to implement, then you are given a permit. That is one of those circumstances when you just proceed to just get a permit. Now, there are issues around the fees. The fees are extremely exorbitant. They're extremely high. We made a lot of noise last year when there was public participation. Initially, the fees were as high as 40,000 for registration, 5,000 for reporting, but we suspected that those were figures that they wanted to use for negotiation. So probably they still wanted 2,000, but they put 5,000 so that the public makes noise, they reduce it to 2,000, their target. Imagine changing a bank account and you must pay. Currently, CBOs do not pay if they're opening bank accounts unless there are specific accounts that require a deposit, but they do not pay the regulator. They only receive a letter to the bank, introduction letter to the bank to open a bank account, but they don't pay. They don't pay 4,000 shillings. Imagine you lose your bank agent, you lose your accountant, maybe even through a transfer, through resignation, and for you to change that name of accountant, you must pay 20,000 to the regulator. So you have all these good things on one side, and all, the other part of the sword is waiting for you. This law is also good, protecting all of us with the Constitution, but we still have tax laws and other laws through which the government has now decided that they are going to use to clamp down on us. They are introducing several severe tax obligations, like currently now they've said that from next year, they will not allow any, when you are doing your tax returns as an organization, that they will not allow any costs or any receipts that are not, that do not have ETIMS compliance. Most of the people we buy goods and services from at the local level, especially when I'm looking at community groups and self-help groups, the people we buy fruits from, water from, the people we hire tents from, the people we hire church halls from, do not have ETIMS compliance. So they will give us the usual receipts with probably the brand, the logo. And KRA is telling us that they're going to reject those until they have ETIMS compliance. Even for the organizations in Nairobi, we have tried even at CFF to comply with the ETIMS. It is extremely difficult. You go to Lodwar, you get a taxi guy, and they do not have ETIMS receipt. They have the usual receipts. And I'm sure even in this platform, some of the participants here are wondering, what is an ETIMS receipt? You go to a petrol station, of course, now they'll tell you, give us your KRA pin so that then we can give you an ETIMS receipt. But at least those are the advanced ones. The supermarkets will have the ETIMS receipt. Hospitals may have ETIMS receipts. But most of our service providers do not have ETIMS receipts. So imagine you are submitting tax returns to KRA in June. You had spent 8 million last year, and you do not have ETIMS to back them up. And so KRA writes back to you and tells you, we have rejected 5 million transactional receipts. We need ETIMS receipts. It becomes very problematic. So again, the government is trying to ensure that they find ways clamping down on civil society, even with a good law as PBO Act. We are hoping that probably good things may come from this. As we walk through the implementation, CFF is supposed to be part of the 15-member committee that is going to monitor implementation. There is a committee of 15, 7 from civil society and 8 from government. CFF has been nominated to be one of the 15-member committee of the member committee, and we will probably try as much as possible to ensure that the implementation of this law is compliant with Article 36 and 27 of the Constitution, and that we have people that are responsive to the needs of the varied population that we have, the diverse population that we have in the country. That would be all for me now, unless we have additional ones. Nalima.
Thank you. Thank you for that comprehensive response. There is one about self-regulating regulation, where regulating forums about exemptions. Yeah. So if they can be exempted to comply on compliance in terms of requirements for PBO. You're on mute.
Sorry. I didn't get the last part of the question. You're saying something.
So the question is, are there exemptions to compliance requirement for PBO that are part of self-regulating forums?
Now, if, yes, it is not compulsory. For example, you can form a self-regulation forum or a network. You can simply call a self-regulation forum a network. So you can, for example, say that along the coast you have a network, and so you form a self-regulation forum from that, and as a network, you are not, I mean, you are not compelled, for example, to pay the 20,000 or the 10,000 to get recognition. So you don't have to pay for recognition, because even unregistered forums without recognition can still fundraise and can still function. So that is the major exemption that is there within the Act, that it is not a must for a self-regulation forum to pay the 10,000 to get a recognition certificate from PBO or from the authority. So that is in terms of recognition. Again, remember, self-regulation forums do not have to share reports, the annual report.
Hello? John, are you still there? I think we have lost John. There's a technical issue. Can anyone hear me? Can anyone hear me? Okay. So maybe okay. So we wait for him to come back to finish the response. However, if you have any comment regarding this conversation, in terms of maybe what are your fears, what are your fears as an organization? As you have heard, the regulations are here. There's a tribunal, and now we understand what the PBO is all about. There are opportunities there, and we are seeing also challenges. So maybe when you assess your organizing, do you feel that you do not know what to do? You are caught up in between to decide either to register or to not to register. So maybe as we wait for John to come back, because I had a question for him. For example, you choose not to, or maybe when you have the endowment, is it called, what is it called? The other certificate, the bestowed certificate, in case you choose to have that. So are the implications the same, or maybe you will follow other regulations and you will not enjoy the benefits that align with the PBO? So unless, as we wait for John to come back, so maybe we can just write questions or write concerns that we feel that we need for a way forward. Oh, John, welcome back. I think we lost you.
I lost power.
Oh, pole sana.
Yeah, Paula.
So when you went off, I was just sharing that I had concerns in terms of given the regulations now and looking at the benefits and the challenges that poses for organizing, and also the fear of maybe not being discriminated directly, but the good example that you shared, you have submitted your reports, and here you want to be exempted, and somebody is just dragging. Today they're out of office. You come back, they tell you, oh, the person had traveled out of the country, yada, 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 such a kind of things. So before you know it, KRA is on your back. I know there are provisions, legal provisions that we can leverage on in terms of the tribunal. But now, as a CBO today, I'm like, this is too much for me. How does it look like for a CBO or a self-help or an organization that has felt that they don't want to be part of the PBO because of all these challenges that the PBO is posing? The other concern was if I have a certificate for bestowment, am I at 50-50 or am I at 100? I can enjoy the benefits, or we have lost him again. John, are you still there? No, okay. Okay. So let us wait for him to come back. Anyway, let me go through the chat to see. So I can see us commenting, appreciating the presentation, the sessions, they're very informative. Okay, duration of time, 5 years to another 5 years too long. Ni kama hii part ilinipita, is it mandatory to change from CBO to PBO? Yes, John, I hope you got my question before you went off.
Now I think now it's stable. It got lost, came back, destabilized the phone connection. Now, so there is a question that was dropped first of all in the chat box when you you're asking about which I'll still ask you to probably just come back again. Someone said probably ilimpita kidogo whether it is compulsory to move from CBO to PBO. Just to repeat for the sake of everybody, it is not compulsory. You have 3 options. Stay where you are, remain a CBO, continue enjoying and suffering whatever the case is. All of us are suffering and enjoying somewhere. So you can retain that position. It's position 1. No one will come for you. That is position 1. Position 2, you can decide, I am tired of being a CBO. I have suffered enough, or I have enjoyed enough. I want to go and enjoy what the PBOs are enjoying. You decide to go register as a PBO. You get a registration certificate, and then your CBO registration certificate will be cancelled. It will be invalidated. So now you have moved to PBO. That is voluntary. No one should push you. There is no deadline. Option 3, you still want to enjoy the position of a CBO. Hautaki kuacha, lakini unataka kuonja ya PBO pia. So you want to still continue being a CBO and test the benefits of a PBO. You are allowed that. You are allowed, just like Don Abdul is saying that I would want to access bestowment. You are allowed to go enjoy benefits of PBO by just a request for a bestowment certificate. That allows you to retain your certificate as a CBO and a certificate of bestowment. You continue enjoying CBO benefits and again also enjoy PBO benefits. Only that your bestowment certificate is temporary. Ile siku serikali imesema you are not complying with their terms and conditions, they will withdraw it. It is 20,000 shillings. Niseme kama serikali only to get a bestowment certificate. Registration is 25,000. So remember that bestowment is not it's not renewable, but it has terms and conditions that if you violate, they can revoke it. So they can revoke it, for example, if you do not report. Remember now, if you get bestowment, you will have 2 places to report to. You report to your regulator as a CBO, and you also report to PBORA, financial and narrative. And you pay the 2,000 every year when you report. Ile siku utachoka, watachoka na wewe, watachukua their bestowment certificate back. Simple terms. Yeah, so you have those options. Someone has asked Don Abdul. Don Abdul is saying that I'm interested in understanding the implication that comes with accessing bestowment certificate as an LGBTIQ organization. What's the duration of renewal? There is no renewal. Abdul, there is no renewal. And the implications, just like any other governance group, unajua, you are getting there knowing that serikali haikupendi. It's very important to note that mimi sipendwi na serikali. Just like sisi kama CFF tunajua hatupendwi na serikali. So you start from there, that the government in place currently do not like you. They don't think that you are adding value. So which means that they will not deny you the bestowment, But they, of course, will always use other laws to ensure that they trap you. So ensure that your house is in order, you pay your taxes, you ensure that financial management is top-notch, so that even as you get bestowment certificate or if you get registration as a PBO, ensure that serikali haiwezi kupata na pande ile nyingine ya compliance. Issues around safeguarding, mna ensure that you are good with it. Someone is asking, hii Swahili ya Don Abdul iko wapi hawa? Nalima, you had asked something, huh?
Yeah.
When I mean, just before I got lost, there was something that you're asking. I'm not sure whether I can remember. Someone has asked,
okay.
Is it only the PBOs or counties can decide to implement their own acts?
Mm-hmm.
You know, there is another law for CBOs, a new law, which is relatively new, that was enacted, that was signed into law by Uhuru Kenyatta in 2022. It's called Community Groups Registration Act, that specifically manages community groups, CBOs and self-help groups. That is now the law that manages CBOs at county level. So you can decide, not that every county manages their own act. The act is one, it is national, but implementation is at county level. We have County Director of Social Services and Director of Social Services helping national government to implement that law at county level for CBOs and for self-help groups. So if you retain your registration as a CBO, of course, you'll be regulated by that law, Community Groups Registration Act. Again, ukienda kwa our YouTube, you will get that, or even website, you will get that copy of the Community Groups Registration Act for those that just want to remain as CBOs and as self-help groups. So remember that we have two laws. There is one for PBOs, and you can also join, but it's voluntary if you're a CBO. If you remain as a CBO, then remember that you also have a law that still regulates you, Community Groups Registration Act. If you Google it, you get it. I'm also typing it on the on the chat box. Community Groups Registration Act. 2022. Yeah.
So, I don't know, John, if you are done.
I'm here. I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you've actually responded to most of the questions that have been raised, including the one that before you left, you have just responded to it because it was asked in other ways.
Yeah.
So I know we need to wrap up. We have taken more than 34 minutes of everyone.
Yes.
We didn't plan for, but just a recommendation from you. So what do you think? What are your recommendations for us as an LGBT organizing, given this, the imbalance?
Yeah. I mean, in Kenya, it has always taken the brave to thrive since the colonial period. I believe that let us not be afraid. I would still suggest that those that can join the regime, let us register and be PBOs. You have more advantages as a PBO because as CBO you are limited to one geographical space. As a PBO, you increase your scope. You also increase opportunities for financial sustainability, either through donations or even through your income generating activities. So there is more opportunity in the PBO Act regime than if you remain as a community group. For me, my advice would be, if you can, kindly join the PBO Act regime. There are more opportunities there than there are for CBOs. The only I mean, the only advantage for CBOs that I know of is that, of course, you remain in that remote area, but you have you have a better opportunity influencing more souls, creating more impact. If you go beyond your sub-county or your county, and also because then there are more financial opportunities when you are a PBO than when you are a community-based organization.
Wow, thank you. So thank you. I think somebody has just, a last one about the report. So somebody just concerned that will the submission of the narrative report pose as a safety for the organization? Because you're giving out what you're really doing, and given the context, the narrative that is out there about our organizing, will we be risking compromising the great work we are doing or the organization?
Yes. Again, this is a yes and no position. Again, it depends on, there is there is a training on secure reporting, usually, that I think as LGBTIQ organizing would also be very instrumental, both in financial and narrative reporting. You can report everything that you are doing without disclosing anything that may put you at risk. And I think that is something that probably we may also want to explore. That includes narrative, financial, and photography. Safe photography, safe financial and narrative reporting. That is very critical. Even when you remain as a CBO, it is very important that we also access that kind of capacity enhancement so that then we can safely report without necessarily exposing the vulnerabilities of the defenders on the ground and even the institution. Yeah.
Thank you so much, John, and thank you everyone who was here throughout the 2+ hours for listening in, for the questions, for the comments, for the appreciations that you have shared. Indeed, we say thank you for your time and for the learnings. I know time is not on our side. I know we want to continue asking questions. We want to continue asking the conversation. But just know that the post-assessment will be shared. Once I think you sign off, it will pop up on your gadget. Kindly make sure you respond so that if there are any questions that might not have been addressed during this forum or you need further support, you'll be at a position to respond accordingly, and we will see what we can do to support each other. So thank you so much, John, for your knowledge and expertise in the area. And we know that this is really wonderful that we have even linked up with you. I know the organizations that have been in this call and they look forward to connecting with you after this. So maybe people will have an opportunity. In case you wish to connect with John, kindly indicate it in the post test so that you can connect with him and continue this conversation, and we see what we can look at to collectively do together for future. So thank you so much and have a great evening or afternoon. Have a great afternoon.